Welcome back to EDH Deck Building. I am your host, Demo, and today I'll be doing my Commander Legends review. Obviously, I'm going to have to break it up because there's a lot to talk about. So I'm going to break it up into, I think, 3 different parts. I'll talk about the non-partner commanders, then I'll talk about the partner commanders, then I'll talk about the rest, the 99, as it were. Not all of them, but the ones that I think are going to be impactful and useful. I'm going to go by EDH Rec decks. So the rating, I'm going to go in order of how many decks have already been made with these commanders, because I think it's relevant to see what people are building and what decks are popular. So starting off, we have Obeca, Brute Chronologist. Everyone's loving this card. I played against this deck last night, and it is exactly what I expected. I think everyone already knows all the good stuff about this commander. So I'm not going to, obviously you can tap it and you get to, there's all sorts of crazy shenanigans you can do. It doesn't surprise me at all that this commander is number 1 right now. It currently has 360 decks on EDH Rec. It is powerful. It has high power potential. So typically a deck that rises to the top in any set is going to have a potential to do high powered, crazy things, and is also going to have a unique ability. And Obeca has both of those. It has a unique, obviously, ability. There's only one other card in the game that does that, which is Sundial of the Infinite. Although there are other sort of time stop effects that can do that. And also it has the potential to be really powerful, right? However, so the downside, I hate to poop on everyone's parade here, but again, I played against this deck last night, and it was exactly as I expected. Obeca is what I refer to as a monolith commander, which means you need her to be on the battlefield in order for anything to happen. Your deck really doesn't do much. So, your deck will still do stuff, but it won't do really good stuff. It'll just sort of be meh. So you're going to spend the whole game. You play your Obeca, right? This guy I was playing plays his Obeca. I just kill it. And then he's got to wait a couple more turns. So he's sitting there dirtling, doing nothing, plays it again. And then when he plays it, he's already up to 6 mana. So he can't really use it much. He doesn't really do much with it. And then I killed it again, and that was pretty much it. I killed his Obeca twice, and that was it for him. He really didn't do anything else, right? Obeca is a monolith commander, which means that there is almost, like, there's Sundial the Infinite, there's a couple time stop effects, not a lot of cards that really do that effect. So you need her to be on the battlefield in order for the deck to work. So I predict that this deck, even though it's going to be really popular, will wane in popularity after a while, because people are going to realize that it's just not fun whenever people just keep killing your commander, right? It's also lots of fun when you're playing against Obeca and someone casts Last Chance and then you just kill their Obeca in response and then they just lose the game, right? And no, you cannot tap her in response. I've heard people say that. I had an argument with a guy in a comment section about this. He's like, "Oh, you just tap her in response." No, you can't tap her in response. For anyone who doesn't know, and by the way, if you're kind of a novice, don't play an Obeca deck, because the timing issues with ending the turn are something that it's complex. You have to wait until the ability is on the stack and then you end the turn. So at the end of that turn, the Final Fortune or the Last Chance ability will come to the stack, and then you end the turn and it removes all the triggers from the stack. By the way, if you're playing this deck, Stifle, Trickbind, probably good cards to throw in there just in case. All right, moving on. Arami of the Dead Tide. I like this card. I like it a lot. I like that it's cheap. That's another thing. I didn't mention this when I was talking about my rules for deck building, but I try to avoid expensive commanders. I like 4 or less, because I don't want to wait forever to cast my commander. So I like 3. And especially if you have to keep recasting them, right? If they're going to be a target, like Obeca or Arami, they're going to be a target, so you're going to probably be recasting them a few times, right? Again, though, a little bit of a monolith commander. There is no other commander in the entire game, no other card, no other creature, no other nothing that does what this card does, right? It gives your stuff encore, right? However, unlike Obeca, a Massacre Worm is still really good. It's still a really good card, even without the encore, right? A Muldrifter is still a really good card without the encore. So you'll be okay if you don't have your commander in play. It'll still be all right. I just don't love the self-milling. That seems to be the strategy people are going with Arami. I don't like self-milling. I'm just not a big fan because you self-mill yourself. There goes your demonic tutor and your counterspell, and then you draw your massacre worm, right? It's totally random. I don't like that. I try to avoid randomness whenever I can. If you can stack the top of your deck so you're milling what you want, that's much better. I don't like the randomness of self-milling. I would never play a deck like that personally for me. Next up, Yurlok of the Scorched Thrash. Not surprised at all about the popularity of the top three. Arami has 350 decks. Yurlok has 225. Yeah, bringing back mana burn. I love it. I mean, I personally love it. I've been playing Magic for over 20 years. I like mana burn. I thought it added another aspect to the game that really made you think. So you can't just add a zillion mana to your mana pool. You actually have to think about it, because you can actually kill yourself. I thought mana burn was genius. I hate that they got rid of it. So I like that about this commander, and I think that sort of nostalgia is why a lot of people are going towards this commander. However, this is the monolith of monolith commanders. There is no other card in the history of Magic that does what Yurlok does. It is the only card that gives people mana burn. So there is no replacement for it. You can't put any backups in the deck. So if you don't have Yurlok on the field, I mean, what is your deck doing, right? I mean, you're basically playing what, overabundance and mana flare. Like, people are just taking advantage of the extra mana they're getting, right? So for that reason, I mean, I think Yurlok is going to be one of those decks that people are jump on right away, even more so than Obeca, and then realize really quickly that their deck literally does nothing without Yurlok in play. Also, another reason is because it seems like people are playing a lot of sort of hate cards that are going to, I don't know, maybe annoy your opponents and make you into the arch enemy. Cards that typically are like Circle of Pain or War's Toll, Mana Barbs, stuff like that. Cards that are just going to annoy the crap out of your opponents and turn you into the arch enemy. Typically, I try to avoid cards like that. Yeah, so Yurlok is my pick for the commander that is going to rocket in popularity in the beginning and then quickly fall off a cliff. Anyway, next up, Gen, Arcanum Weaver. I like it. It's interesting. Another sort of monolith commander that when you don't have it in play, you're not really doing a whole lot. You're just basically playing enchantment deck. And Mardu is not great for enchantment tribal. I mean, it's really cool. It's interesting. I like that they have these unique abilities. I just don't like that, you're sort of putting yourself in a box, right? I should note, it's kind of interesting that the top four commanders all have tap abilities. When you have a commander with a tap ability, typically you're not going to use it right away unless you have a haste enabler or something. 1,000-year elixir is really good for this. I would probably put that in most of these decks. It comes into play and it's going to sit there for a whole turn before you can even use it, right? Even if you give Gen haste, his ability costs white, black, red, so you have to play him and then have 3 mana open to use him right away, even if you do put a Lightning Greaves on him, right? I don't love it. I don't love that part of him. Like I said, I'm a big removal guy. For me, when I see an Obeca or a Yurlok or something, I'm just going to kill it right away because I know their deck's not going to do anything, without it on the field. Gen isn't so bad though, because you can just play lots of really good enchantments that are still going to be good, right? But if you play Gen and you have an overwhelming splendor in your graveyard, chances are your Gen's not going to last it's going to get removed as fast as possible, right? I also people have been talking about curses with this. I don't love that either. I don't love curses in EDH at all. You're sort of playing Kingmaker a lot. You just basically have to target one guy and screw that guy until he's completely dead. Or all his resources are exhausted. I don't love that strategy. Maybe putting a few in there is okay, but I wouldn't. I mean, I just don't like Curse Tribal at all. It's just not a good strategy in EDH. Next up, Lysa, Shroud of Dusk. And yes, it's pronounced Lysa, as in Lysa Arryn from Game of Thrones, not Lisa. or Lysa or whatever. Lysa, Shroud of Dusk. I'm really surprised how popular this is. It has 186 decks so far on EDH Rec. It's number 5. I didn't think it would be so popular. It's kind of it's a very taxy, almost staxy card, right? It's a tax. It's not really a stax. I shouldn't say that. People misuse that word all the time. It's a tax card, right? And tax decks aren't fun. People don't like playing against them. Again, this is a card that, people are going to keep killing your commander, but that's okay, right? Because you can just keep paying life to cast it, so that's not so bad. Obviously the strategy here is you just gain lots of life and then everyone else suffers and you don't so much, right? This is just a card that I don't think people are going to love to play against. Like Kambal. Kambal is a great comparison. This is even worse than Kambal, and people usually groan when they see a Kambal across the table. I know I do. I would almost make a CDH deck out of this, out of Lysa, personally. I think it's maybe better in that format. Moving on. Jared Karthelian True Heir. 181 decks currently on EDH Rec. Again, not too surprised about the popularity here. It's an interesting deck. It does a very interesting thing. Obviously, the strategy here is, I get the monarchy and then I cast a blasphemous act and all my opponent's creatures dies and my Jared becomes a 16/16 and I swing with it. It's very Voltron-y. That's not a strategy I'm a big fan of personally, although it is a really cool, interesting deck. I would definitely not be upset to see a Jared across the table from me. One thing I want to note, though, I've noticed this. I've checked the cards that people have been putting in this deck, and they are lacking something that I think is integral. Jared reads, Jared Karthelian True Heir enters the battlefield. When he enters the battlefield, target opponent becomes the monarch. You can't become the monarch this turn. That doesn't mean your turn. That just means the turn he comes into play. So cast him with Flash, right? Vidalcan Orrery, Savage Summoning, which is a card that is way underplayed, right? You cast it on your opponent's end step right before your turn. They get the monarchy. They don't even get to draw off of it because it's already their end step. And then you untap on your turn, and now it's a new turn, and you can become the monarch immediately. I think that's just absolutely the way to go with this deck. Also, Mayal's Anima auto include in this deck too. I don't know if people are putting that in there, but that just seems like a great way to just win the game. Also another card that doesn't get played nearly enough. Anyway, really cool card though. I like it a lot. It's very interesting. Next up, Belby, Corrupted Observer. I'm a little surprised this isn't more popular. It's got 165 decks. I thought this would be more towards the top, giving yourself lots. People seem to like the strategy of making tons of mana and casting giant, Eldrazi and stuff like that. So I'm actually surprised this isn't more popular. On turn 3, you could be casting a 9-drop, right? Maybe bigger, a 10-drop. You could be casting an Ulamog on turn 3. That's game over. So I thought this would be more popular, actually. I was kind of dreading seeing this one across the table from me. I'm kind of glad it's not. It's interesting. I almost would make a deck with this. I think I would go more of a strategy of planar bridge, planar portal. I think those cards are perfect for this deck because it's a mana sink. You're not just casting one big thing. You're getting mana every turn, so it's a mana sink that you keep sinking mana into. But it's neat. Obviously your opponents get the mana too, right? So it's a little huggy in that way. It's a cool card. I like it a lot. Moving on. AC, Tyrant of Gyre Strait. AC, Icy, I don't know. Maybe it's Icy because he's in icy waters. I don't know. Nothing to see here. Literally, go to Tatyova's page and just look at all the cards that she's got and swap. You could literally just swap out commanders with a Tatyova deck. It's exactly the same. It's just it's not exactly the same. Obviously, it's slightly different, but there's nothing to say. Blue, green, land drop. Okay, next. Quain, Itinerant Meddler. When I first saw this guy, I thought he was terrible. each player may draw a card, and then each play like it's not even it's even a may, so you can't play like a Kami of the Crescent Moon deck where you're forcing your opponents to draw. They can, if you have something out, they can just say, "Oh, I'm just not going to draw." They can just choose not to. You can't even force them to. So I thought it was awful. But then I started looking at some of the stuff people were putting in it. And I mean, it's not bad. If you have, so a Hull Breacher, right, new card in this set, if you have that out, then your opponents just won't draw because they won't be able to anyway. They'll just be giving you a treasure token. So if you can sort of stop your opponent from getting that extra draw, then you're just drawing, you're tapping to draw a card every turn, right? And gain a life. And then you put in stuff like Teferi's Insight, or Alhametra's Archive, and then you're benefiting more off to the draw. So it's not bad. It's not bad. I don't love huggy style where you're helping your opponents. That's always bad news in my opinion. But I like that people are finding a way around it. Next up, Hamza, Guardian of Irration. 128 decks on EDH Rec right now. This is another one I thought would be a little more popular. That being said, there's nothing to really talk about. It's a +1/+1 counters commander. They seem to have moved +1/+1 counters into Celsnia. It used to be Simic, and they seem to be moving it over into Celsnia because Celsnia, I don't know if it really has a thing, but now it has +1/+1 counters. Yeah, nothing to talk about here, really. Just +1/+1 counter, but lots of creatures with counters on them in your deck. That is all. The one thing though, Elephant's Graveyard. Elephant's Graveyard is now a card that, put that in this deck. That's an absolute for sure in this deck, I think. Anyway, moving on. Wyleth Soul of Steel. Boros, Aura, and Equipment Commander. They're really flogging this horse, Do we have enough of these already? Do we need another Boros, Aura, and Equipment Commander? How many do we have? Like 3 or 4? They just came out with one, the new Akiri. But Akiri is sort of a go wide strategy where you have lots of different creatures with equipment on them, whereas Wyleth is more of a go tall, so it's more of a Voltron, right? You want to put lots of Aura and equipment just on him, then you draw more cards. Obviously, they're really trying to push more card draw into Boros. Thank you, Command Zone for that one. We get it already. Boros needs more card draw. Enough. I think this is the wrong way to go about it, though. Feather was the right way to go about it. Feather was great. There's nowhere on that card does it say draw, right? It's card advantage. It's card advantage without actually drawing cards. Boros doesn't need to draw cards. You just find other ways to give a card advantage, right? And enough with the Aura and Equipment Commanders. We got enough of those. Moving on. Archelos, Lagoon Mystic, right? Everyone loves the turtle. It's great art, really cool. I really think, and I think I heard someone else say this, I really think this should have been banned. I don't know why it's black. It's sort of Staxy a little bit, which is not black at all. It's more white. It seems like a more of a Bant commander to me. I'm not sure why they made it Salte. I was really excited about this when I first saw it. I've always wanted to make a tap deck where my creatures are being tapped and untapped and use like the inspired ability like King Makar, the Gold Cursed. I would put Surge Spanner in this deck. You could have lots of fun with it. Unfortunately, right out of the gate, people are like, oh, it's a Stax commander because you can make your opponent's stuff come into play tapped. So now I can't play it, right? Because every time if I show up at a table with it, people are going to go, he's playing Stax, get him, right? Which sucked. I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how it goes. It's at 119 decks right now, so it's sort of hanging in the middle. We'll see how it plays out. Speaking of commanders that is going to make you a target, Blim Comedic Genius. Everyone's kind of excited about playing this card. I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that are excited about playing this card. It's very Rakdos. I really don't. Again, this is another commander that I think people are going to play and quickly just pack the deck up and put it away forever. You're going to be a target because everyone's going to see that you're paying Blim and they're going to go, oh, he's going to try to give me a demonic pact, or he's going to try to give me, some horrible thing that's going to ruin the game for me. So I'll just make sure I kill him first, or I kill his commander every time it comes out in play, and you're never going to be able to do anything. Again, just like with the tap ability of those first few commanders, Blim has to attack, so you can't just play him. You have to wait a whole nother turn and then attack with him, and you have to deal damage, right? He has to deal combat damage to a player in order for his effect to take place. And if you're not doing that, right, you're just going to have a handful of cards that are really awful, that you can't, that they're just going to sit there because you don't want to play them because you have to get rid of them right away, right? Forbidden Crypt, and Demonic Pact and stuff like that. Cards that are to you really, really bad. So the deck just doesn't play well, I don't think. At least I wouldn't go that direction if I was doing it. You don't have to go that direction, giving your opponent awful stuff, right? Moving on, Nevin Urborg Tyrant. The old Larry Nevin. It's great that they printed this card. Unfortunately, and again, I was excited about this card, and then I thought, I immediately right out of the gate, I thought, oh man, you could use stuff like Abnormal Endurance and Gift of Immortality, and you just, sack your commander, destroy everything, bring them back, make a bunch of tokens. It's a great strategy, and a strategy that is going to have people scooping or hating you or making you the arch enemy. It's just not, even though I think I could make a really good deck with that, everyone would hate me, everyone would target me. It just, because what else do you do? I mean, imagine if someone has that across the table from you, and that they're just going to keep playing it and sacking it and wiping your board. That sucks. Nobody wants that, right? So I'm going to kill that guy first, because I don't even want him to cast his Larry Nevin once, because as soon as it dies, it's going to destroy all my stuff, right? So yeah, I like where they were going with this. It's really cool, super cool art. Just I don't think that it's going to be very fun to play with or play against. Next up, Abomination of Alanowar, Black Green Elf Commander. Yeah, not much to talk about here. I mean, if I was playing Black Green Elves, Golgari Elves, this would probably be my first choice. Having Vigilance and Menace is not to be undersold. When you have a giant creature and it has Vigilance, that's really good in Commander, because you can keep attacking. And that's one of the reasons I think Atrax is so good, is because of the Vigilance. The Vigilance really puts her over the top, in my opinion, because you can keep attacking and then save her as a blocker to protect your super friends or whatever. But that being said, there's really nothing to talk about here. It's just it's an elf commander, right? Next up, Felice, Reverent Medium. I thought this would be a little more popular. It's we're at about 15 or 16 now. There's a lot of different ways you can build this deck, which is what I like. She costs 5, which I don't love. That's getting a bit much to, for me, that's like, okay, I want to start doing stuff right away and getting a payoff for it, but I got to wait until turn 5 before she comes out. And also, you have to figure out a way to make tokens right away. Preferably you play her and then make tokens, but you're not going to have any mana open. So how are you making tokens without mana? Smothering Tithe obviously is a good way to do that, because it is at the beginning of each end step, which is good. And it's creating any token, which is good. It doesn't have to be a creature token. So there's lots of ways you can go about it. It just seems very underwhelming. If you have Felice stay in play for a couple of turns, great, you're good. You can cast a giant Secure the Waste or something, and then you can just kill everyone. It has to stay in play for a couple of turns, though, in order for it to really be effective. That's the only downside. Emoti, Celebrant of Bounty. Not very popular, and I'm not surprised. It's, it has Cascade, woohoo, and spells you cast with converted mana cost 6 or greater have Cascade also. Nothing else, just 6 or greater. So I don't know. What are you playing? 6 or greater tribal here? I don't know. I mean, for me, I don't love Cascade. I mean, I cast Emoti and I get a counter spell off the top and it just fizzles. And I just paid 5 mana for a 3/1. I don't know. I'm just not you want to manipulate the top of your deck for sure. So that you're getting value out of this, because otherwise it's just bad. For me, I know people love Cascade because you're getting free spells, but you don't know what you're like. You get a removal spell and there's nothing to remove. It's just, It's just too, again, it's the randomness. I don't love the randomness. But if you can stack your top of your deck and figure out, what you're getting, then okay, could be all right. I just think it's very underwhelming. It's especially if you're playing Cascade. I mean, there's so many better options. However, Averna, the Chaos Bloom, is not one of them. She or he or it is even worse. Doesn't even have Cascade. It's a Cascade commander that doesn't have Cascade. I mean, I don't know. It could be good. I mean, they made a lot of new Cascade cards in this last set, so it could be good. You'd have to see it in action to actually see putting the lands into play and stuff. If that works, again, stacking the top of your deck is going to be key there. Doesn't really get me too excited though. I'm not a big Cascade guy. What does get me excited though, next up, Amarath the Lustrous has 83 decks. I'm actually really surprised this is more popular because it's doing some pretty crazy stuff, I think. I mean, it costs a lot. It costs 6. And I know I said I don't like expensive commanders, but Amarath is one of those commanders that you have to set up first. So you're going to set up, again, you want to be manipulating the top of your deck. That's paramount. So you get out your Sylvan Library or your Mirri's Guile or your Sensei's Divining Top. You're kind of setting up first. Then you play Amarath and then you start going off, right? So you play Amarath and then you play a land and you got a land on top of your deck, so you put it in your hand, and then you play an artifact and spin your top in response and then draw that again. And there's just lots of neat things you can do. I like that. I like decks where I actually wanted to build. I've a couple of times built a deck where I'm manipulating the top of my deck to do stuff. And they didn't really stick. This one though, I'm really excited about. I actually wasn't going to build it because I thought it would be really popular, and it looks like it's not going to be. Only 83 decks so far, so that's great. And I don't have a Bant deck right now, so that works out nicely for me. Moving on, Nimris, Una's Trickster, another one that I thought would be more popular. I mean, Flash Tribal, that's great. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's just me and Josh from Command Zone. I love casting things at instant speed. It's such a massive advantage. This is definitely a deck I want to build. I'm glad to see it's not super popular. I'm definitely building this deck. I think it's going to be fun. But not to be undersold is you are putting a card in your graveyard, right? So that's, let's not forget about that. That can be advantageous as well. Just a little sneak peek into my deck. Hakon Stromgold Scourge. Yes, that's right. You're going in the graveyard, buddy, because Nimris is a knight. Love that. Love it. All right, moving on. Hans Eriksson. I like it. It's so much lore, obviously. I won't get into all the lore. I think a lot of people have already done that already about, it's Safi, Eric's daughter's brother, right? He was killed by the Lurgoyf, I think. Really interesting card. For me, I mean, obviously there's two ways you can go about building this deck. The first way I thought is, okay, all my creatures in my deck are going to have power 3 or less and toughness 2 or greater. So that way nobody's killing anybody, right? Because if their power is 3 or less, they're not going to kill Hands. And if their toughness is 2 or greater, then Hands isn't going to kill them. And you could do that. You could build that deck. It would be pretty good. I think it would. You could also put in, Eternal Witness and Rexage, and yeah, they would die, but you still get the value out of it, right? I think also Haste Enabler is good. I always, again, an attack, you have to attack to get the ability. So a Haste Enabler, you want to attack right away, play Hands and zip, away you go. Again, manipulating, it's kind of funny that there's like 5 decks in a row here where it's like manipulating the top of your deck is so important, right? Mirri's Guile, Sylvan Library, Sensei's Divining Top, stuff like that. Knowing what's on your top of your deck is so important. And also with Hands, you can play Worldly Tutor, Sylvan Tutor, so right before you attack, you put exactly what you want on top. I also like the idea of putting something like a Balefire Dragon. You put that on top of your deck because you have to wipe your opponent's board. Sure, your Hands is going to die, but oh well, it's worth it to get a 6/6 dragon in play and then kill your opponent's board, right? I also like Geode Golem in this deck, a card that nobody seems to play because it comes into play, kills your Hands, but then it's going to smack your opponent and then you immediately cast your Hands again, right? So that's kind of neat. And there's also lots of things you can do with like Enrage. and stuff like that. You know, creatures that you want to be dealing damage to. Naeth, the fight commander, is a no-brainer in this one too. I think it's lots of fun. I'm not surprised it's only at 70 decks though, because it is a little difficult to sort of, you know, it's not super obvious and it's difficult to figure out where to go with it. I might build that deck. I haven't decided yet. Next up, Gore Muldrak, Amphenologist. Another very interesting, unique deck that is, you know, again, it's not too popular, only 63 decks on EDH Rec. Not surprising because it's odd, and it's tough to figure out where you're going to go with this. I have built a Gore Muldrak deck. I might do a deck tech on it. It's it's a strategy that I've been wanting to use for a while, and I wanted to build a Gore Muldrak deck, and I kind of was like, okay, he does work with the strategy that I wanted to do. It's a really interesting, cool deck. I mean, it's not crazy powerful, but it's really cool, and I'm super happy with it. So maybe I'll do a deck tech on that here right away. Next up, Lathiel, the Bounteous Dawn. Yay, a unicorn commander, right? Who cares? No, it's actually a +1/+1 counters commander, also a life gain commander in a way, right? So there's two things. That's what I like about it. It's got two different things going on. So you can go the life gain route, and just keep putting counters, right? So you put a Soul Warden in play. Man, this is great because it's at the beginning of each end step. So you have a Soul Warden in play. Every turn, someone's putting a creature in play, and you're putting, 2 counters on stuff, right? Oh no, sorry, it's up to that many +1/+. Oh wow, jeez. Yeah, that could be really good. I'm surprised this isn't more popular. Obviously, Hamza is sort of stealing the show with the +1/+1 counters theme. Again, they seem to switch that theme to Lathiel. I think I would go a life gain deck with this, though. I mean, it's already got lifelink. Yeah, because you don't really need to be putting counters on stuff with any other cards, because Lathiel is going to be doing that on her own. You only need to be gaining life, and then you're just throwing counters around like crazy, right? And you can distribute them however you want. I think that's a really underrated commander. I think it's pretty good. I might, I already have several Celsnia decks, but I might consider making that. Next up, Jury, Master of the Review. Only 49 decks. It's I think that's probably because it's low powered. Super cool art. I love, what a wicked looking card. Rakdos. So obviously he's doing Rakdos. Sacrificing stuff seems to be the Rakdos thing now. Again, it's the wording is important whenever you sacrifice a permanent, right? So Dockside Extortionist is going to be an all-star in this deck. It's usually an all-star in every deck that it's in, but super good in this deck, right? In fact, I would probably lean towards sacking treasure tokens almost more, or sacking stuff like that rather than creatures. I mean, sacking creatures is obvious also, but you can sacrifice any permanent, even a land, right? Bloodstained Mire, put Evolving Wilds in there. Any permanent that you sack is going to put counters on Jury, right? So, and there's just a lot of cards that just go into this deck automatically. I used to have a Lazolda deck, and these two decks are going to be very similar builds. I think Mayhem Devil is obviously an auto include. Next up, Kolfener, the Last U. I thought this deck would be more popular. They really gushed over it on the Command Zone guys when they were doing their review. Lots of different crazy combos and stuff you can do with it. Again, it costs 6. That's a lot. But just like with Amarath, it is sort of a deck that you're going to want to set up, I think, a little bit. And then you play your commander, and then you can go to town. So I don't mind it so much that it costs 6. I don't know if it's really my thing, but there's definitely a lot of really neat things you can do with that. I recommend checking out the Command Zone guys' review on it, because they had like about 20 different combos and stuff that you could do with it. Next up, Kangi Sky Warden. Nothing to see here. I mean, just another boring, they seem to be doing this flying tribal thing now. So Kangi used to be a bird commander, and now it's just a flying commander. And I mean, the ability is super underwhelming. Whenever Kangi attacking creatures with flying, so you have to have Kangi attack in order for it to do anything or block. you know? Just, yeah, I don't love it at all. I mean, it's really easy to build a flying tribal deck right now. There's so many cards that fit into that. In Azorius, obviously, right? It's a very easy build. It's a great deck for someone who's just starting out, and you just want to play a flying aggro deck, you know. It's fun, I guess. Just make sure you put like your coastal piracies and your Binding Thasses in there. Next up, Zara, Renegade Recruiter. Uh, Man, they're really cranking out the pirate commanders. I mean, pirates have only been around for about a year and a half or something, and we already have like 6 pirate commanders. Um, they're really milking that one. This isn't so much a pirate commander, though. Obviously, I mean it is a pirate, but it's not really doing anything that has anything to do with pirates. It's interesting. I was thinking at first I didn't really. There was nothing about this. First of all, stealing other people's stuff is a strategy that really will. People don't like that. People don't like having their stuff stolen. They don't have like having their stuff used against them. People get annoyed by that easily, so just beware. That strategy can piss some people off. Um, However, and also the thing about, what if you attack your opponent and he doesn't have a creature in your hand? You get nothing, right? It's like, ugh, that's kind of bad. However, I thought, you just bounce, just keep bouncing stuff. Any creature that's in play, you just bounce it into their opponent's hand and then attack them, and then you get it, right? It's not bad. It's interesting. I don't think it's anything that I'm gonna do because it's just I'm just not big on the strategy of stealing my opponent's stuff. Next up, Nostro, Voice of the Crags. This deck I also made. I'm not surprised at all how low it is. It's only 34 decks, and that is because the payoff is very underwhelming, right? And I've already played the deck, and I totally get why it's not popular. I mean, the idea is maybe it's a storm deck and you cast like 10 spells, and then, but then what's your payoff? Scry 10? Big whoop, right? Or gain 10 life, yay, right? So you go through all of that work and all you get is the gain 10 life. There's easier ways to do that. However, for me, I figured out a really interesting way to play this deck that's tons of fun. There's no huge payoffs. I don't really build decks like that have huge payoffs. I'm more of a value guy. I like lots of little value things going on. And so I built a really cool deck. I like it. It's fun. Again, I might do a deck tech on that one just to show everybody, exactly what I did. It's kind of interesting. I like it. It's a fun deck to play. Not surprised at all that it's unpopular, though. Next up, Belle Borka, Spectral Sergeant. So first off, wins the prize for worst name ever. Belle Borka? God, that's terrible. Also, when I first saw this card, the wording is so bizarre. Note the converted mana cost of each card as it's like, why are you noting anything? That's very weird. That's something they used to do way back in the day. Note the kind of mana or note this. Like, I'm surprised they brought that back into the game. I don't know why they just didn't word it. Belle Borka's Spectral Sergeant's power is equal to the greatest card that's been exiled this turn. Why does it have to be noted? Why can't it just be like, do you actually have to note it? Do you actually have to write it down or it doesn't count? Like, it's just, I don't know why they worded it like that. Very weird. Also, if you're trying to build a deck where you are exiling giant things like Draco and then trying to, Voltron your opponents, that's just a bad strategy. You're probably, there's only a few really super expensive cards like that, and you're going to get one shot with it, and you're not even going to kill your opponent. And Belle Borka has no evasion at all. I don't like that strategy at all. I do not suggest going that route. The route of I'm going to make Belle Borka's power really high. It's probably going to be like a 5 or a 6 or something, maybe, which is just okay. It's a card advantage card, though, right? It's like I was talking about before. It's a Boros card that gives you card advantage. At the beginning of your upkeep, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card this turn. It's like a Howling Mine just for yourself, right? So I would probably, Belle Borka is one card that I would just build maybe a good stuff deck around. If you had some kind of strategy in Boros that you wanted to play, Belle Borka would be a good commander for that, just because it's going to give you card advantage. It's going to draw you an extra card every turn, right? Next up, Rayav Master Smith. Here we go again. Another, I can't even believe it that we just had a Boros equipment commander with a Kiri, and now we have 2 more in this set. I mean, really? Come on. How many do we need? There's like, and this one's not even good. I mean, I'm not surprised at all. It's at the bottom. 16 decks only. I'm surprised anyone's playing it at all because there's like 5 other Boros commanders that are better at equipment and auras. And what is it, even auras? No, it's just equipment. Just very meh, just, I don't know. It's a dwarf, I guess. Yippee. Moving on. Almost at the bottom, and you can tell by the cards that we have here. Captain Vargas Wrath, another pirate commander. There's just so many now. Yeah, very underwhelming. Pirate tribal, yay, nothing to see here. Moving on. Last and probably definitely least, Tuya Bearclaw. Yeah, just very... I mean, these last 3 commanders are just sort of aggro commanders. There's really nothing else you can do but just I'm attacking you with my stuff, which is just very boring. I would never in a million years play any of these commanders. I like that they're cheap, 2, 2, and 3, that's good. But they're all just really bad, really boring, very meh, very, they're just aggro decks. Aggro, just straight aggro isn't a great strategy in Commander at all. Typically, not surprised at all that they're right at the bottom. So that's it. That wraps up all of the non-partner commanders. I'll follow this up probably with the partner commanders and then talk about the rest of the cards. So yeah, thanks for tuning in.